Every MMA Choke Explained, the complete guide to submission warfare. The rear naked choke, the king of all submissions. The rear naked choke isn't just a submission, it's the nuclear option of grappling. When Khabib Nurmagomedov locked this around Conor McGregor's neck at UFC 229, he wasn't just finishing a fight, he was demonstrating why this technique has ended more UFC bouts than any other submission in history. The beauty of the rear naked choke lies in its simplicity and lethality. You slip one arm under the chin, lock it with the other in a figure four grip, and squeeze. But here's what separates the amateurs from the killers. It's not about crushing the windpipe like some street fight. Elite fighters target the carotid arteries on both sides of the neck, cutting off blood flow to the brain. Your opponent has roughly 8 to 10 seconds before they're unconscious, whether they tap or not. Royce Gracie proved this at UFC 1, choking out men twice his size with technique over strength. The rear naked choke doesn't care about your bench press numbers or your knockout power. It's the great equalizer, and once it's locked in deep, even the toughest fighters in the world have no choice but to submit or sleep. The guillotine, the wrestler's nightmare. If the rear naked choke is the king, then the guillotine is the assassin waiting in the shadows. This submission has destroyed more wrestling careers than bad knees and weight cuts combined. The guillotine thrives on one moment, when your opponent shoots for a takedown with their head exposed. John Jones turned this into an art form when he caught Lyoto Machida in a standing guillotine at UFC 140. Machida, a former light heavyweight champion, went completely limp in Jones's arms like a rag doll. The technique seems straightforward. Wrap one arm under the chin, lock your hands, and squeeze. But the devil is in the details. Elite fighters like Charles Oliveira don't just grab and hope. They angle their hips, create space, and use their entire body as a lever. The pressure isn't just on the neck. It's compressing the trachea while simultaneously cranking the cervical spine. What makes the guillotine truly dangerous is its versatility. You can hit it standing from guard even during scrambles. It's the submission that makes wrestlers think twice about shooting, because one mistake and they're taking a nap. The gogoplata, the submission from another planet. Now we enter the realm of the impossible. The gogoplata looks like something a contortionist would do at Cirque du Soleil, not a legitimate fighting technique. But Nick Diaz proved its effectiveness when he used it to submit Gomi Takanori, and suddenly every jiu-jitsu practitioner on earth was trying to bend their shin into their opponent's throat. The gogoplata requires you to be on your back, hook your foot behind your opponent's neck, and use your shin bone as a blade across their throat. It sounds insane because it is insane. The flexibility required is borderline superhuman, and the setup opportunities are rarer than a humble Conor McGregor tweet. But when it works, it's devastating. The shin bone creates a rigid bar that compresses the trachea with surgical precision. Your opponent can't posture up, can't escape, and can't breathe. It's like being choked by a human pretzel, and the psychological effect is just as powerful as the physical one. Most fighters have never even seen a gogoplata in person, let alone defended one. That element of surprise, combined with the technical brilliance required to execute it, makes the gogoplata the unicorn of submissions. Also, the gogoplata lovers hit the like button, you know? The arm in guillotine, the upgraded assassin. Take everything deadly about the regular guillotine and multiply it by 10. That's the arm in guillotine. This variation traps not just the neck, but also one of your opponent's arms, creating a submission that's nearly impossible to escape once locked in. The genius of the arm in guillotine lies in its restriction of movement. When you trap that arm alongside the neck, you eliminate your opponent's ability to bridge, roll, or use their strength to muscle out. They become a fish in a net, and the more they struggle, the tighter it gets. Fighters like Dustin Poirier have turned this into a signature weapon, using it to punish overeager wrestlers who dive in without proper head position. The pressure distribution is what makes this choke so effective. Instead of relying purely on neck compression, you're creating a fulcrum with their trapped arm, using their own shoulder as leverage against their carotid arteries. It's biomechanics meets brutality, and the result is a submission that forces even the toughest fighters to tap within seconds. The arm triangle, the heavyweight's best friend. When you weigh 250 pounds and your opponent is trying to survive underneath you, the arm triangle becomes your best friend. This choke is pure physics. You use your opponent's own shoulder to cut off blood flow to their brain while applying downward pressure that would make a hydraulic press jealous. Brock Lesnar demonstrated this perfectly against Shane Carwin at UFC 116. After getting pummeled for an entire round, Lesnar secured an arm triangle in the second and squeezed until Carwin went to sleep. The beauty of this submission is how it uses your opponent's body against them. You thread your arm around their neck and their own shoulder, creating a triangle of pressure that tightens with every breath they take. The heavier you are, the more devastating this becomes. It's not just a choke, it's a crushing submission that combines asphyxiation with the feeling of being buried alive. Fighters in the lighter weight classes can hit this too, but when a heavyweight locks it in, it's game over. The pressure is so immense that tapping becomes a survival instinct, not a choice. The triangle choke, the guard player's crown jewel. If Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu had a logo, it would be the triangle choke. This submission is the perfect marriage of technique and leverage, allowing smaller fighters to strangle larger opponents using nothing but their legs and geometry. The triangle choke is deceptively simple in concept, but devastatingly complex in execution. You trap your opponent's head and one arm between your legs, creating a triangle shape that cuts off blood flow to the brain. But here's where it gets beautiful. The tighter they try to escape, the deeper the choke becomes. It's a Chinese finger trap made of human limbs. Anderson Silva showed the world how deadly this could be when he caught Chael Sonnen in a triangle with just minutes left in their first fight. Sonnen had dominated for 4.5 rounds, talking trash and controlling the action. Then Silva locked in the triangle, and suddenly all that wrestling and all that mouth meant nothing. The triangle choke doesn't discriminate based on size, strength, or ego. It's pure technique, and when executed properly, it's as inevitable as gravity. The D'Arce choke, the scrambler's secret weapon. Named after Joe D'Arce, this choke has become the go-to submission for fighters who thrive in chaos. The D'Arce choke is what happens when you take the arm triangle concept and make it work from every angle imaginable. Islam Makhachev proved its effectiveness when he used it to submit Renato Moicano at UFC 311, threading his arm deep under the neck and across to the opposite armpit. What makes the D'Arce so dangerous is its versatility. You can hit it from turtle position during scrambles, even when your opponent thinks they're safe in half guard. It's the submission that punishes movement, turning your opponent's attempts to escape into opportunities to finish the fight. The mechanics are brutal in their efficiency. You create a noose with your arms using their own shoulder as an anchor point. The pressure builds gradually, then all at once. One moment they're fighting to improve position, the next they're tapping frantically or going to sleep. The D'Arce choke has become the signature of modern grapplers who understand that the best submissions come not from static positions, but from the beautiful chaos of transition. Hit the like button with everything you've got. We're just getting started with the deadliest submissions in combat sports. The anaconda choke, the gator roll of death. The anaconda choke gets its name from the deadly predator that suffocates its prey, and the comparison is terrifyingly accurate. This submission combines the arm triangle concept with a rolling motion that tightens the noose with every rotation. Unlike the D'Arce, where you thread under the armpit, the anaconda locks outside the arm, creating a different angle of attack that's equally devastating. The signature element of the anaconda is the gator roll, a violent rotation that uses your entire body weight to tighten the choke. It's like being caught in a washing machine filled with concrete. Your opponent can't defend what they can't predict, and the rolling motion creates a momentum that's impossible to counter. Fighters like Frank Mir have used this technique to submit opponents who thought they were safe in scrambles. The anaconda punishes wrestlers who get too comfortable in transition, turning their own forward pressure into the mechanism of their defeat. When locked in properly, The anaconda choke creates a pressure so intense that tapping becomes an involuntary reflex. It's not just a submission, it's a reminder that in grappling, there's always a bigger predator waiting. The Von Flue choke, the counter-attack masterpiece. Jason Von Flue didn't just create a submission, he created a philosophy. The Von Flue choke is the ultimate counter to the guillotine, turning your opponent's aggression into their downfall. When someone locks in a guillotine from bottom position, instead of panicking and pulling your head out, you pass to side control and use your shoulder as a weapon. The genius of the Von Flue lies in its psychological warfare. Your opponent thinks they have you trapped in a guillotine, but you're actually setting up their destruction. You drive your shoulder into their neck while controlling their body, creating pressure that forces them to choose between holding the guillotine and breathing. Most choose breathing. This submission has become a staple for fighters who understand that the best defense is often a devastating offense. It punishes greed. Fighters who hold onto submissions too long instead of transitioning to better positions. The Von Flue choke is a reminder that in MMA, every technique has a counter, and sometimes the counter is more dangerous than the original attack. The Ezekiel choke. The sleeve strangler. The Ezekiel choke is named after Ezekiel Paraguaçu, a Brazilian judoka who made this technique famous in the 1980s. What makes this choke unique is its use of the GI sleeve as a weapon, turning your opponent's own uniform into the instrument of their defeat. In gi grappling, you grab your opponent's sleeve and use it as leverage to create a noose around their neck. The fabric becomes a garrote, and your grip becomes the handle. But here's where it gets interesting. In no-gi situations, fighters have adapted the Ezekiel by using a rear naked choke grip instead of the sleeve. Alexei Oleinik has made a career out of hitting Ezekiel chokes from impossible positions, including from bottom guard. He submitted opponents who thought they were in dominant positions, proving that the Ezekiel is more about understanding leverage than relying on specific grips. The psychological effect of the Ezekiel is devastating. Your opponent feels safe in mount or side control, then suddenly they're being choked by what feels like their own clothing. It's like being betrayed by your own equipment, and the confusion often leads to panic, which only makes the choke tighter. The bulldog choke, the front-facing strangler. The bulldog choke breaks all the rules of conventional submission grappling. While most chokes attack from behind or from the side, the bulldog comes straight at you like a freight train. Ben Askren shocked the world when he used this technique to submit Robbie Lawler at UFC 235, proving that sometimes the most unconventional approaches are the most effective. The bulldog choke is applied from the front, putting immense pressure on the neck while controlling the head. It's like being grabbed by a pit bull that refuses to let go. The technique requires perfect timing and positioning, but when executed correctly, it's nearly impossible to escape. What makes the bulldog so dangerous is its unpredictability. Most fighters train to defend rear naked chokes, guillotines, and triangles. But how do you prepare for a submission that attacks from an angle that shouldn't work? The bulldog choke is a reminder that innovation in martial arts comes from thinking outside the box and being willing to try techniques that seem impossible on paper but work perfectly in practice. The pillory, the ankle-assisted assassin. The pillory choke is so rare that most fighters have never seen it, let alone defended against it. Nick Pace introduced this technique to the UFC when he used it to submit Will Campuzano, creating a submission that looks like something from a medieval torture device. The setup is complex. You secure half guard, break your opponent's posture, swing your leg over their neck, thread your arm under their neck to grab your own ankle, then clasp your hands and apply pressure. It sounds like a yoga pose designed by a sadist, but the effectiveness is undeniable. The pillory combines leg pressure with arm leverage, creating a multi-directional attack that's impossible to defend once locked in. Your opponent can't posture up because of the leg, can't turn away because of the arm control, and can't breathe because of the combined pressure. It's like being caught in a human bear trap. The rarity of the pillory is both its weakness and its strength. While it's difficult to set up and requires specific positioning, the element of surprise is so complete that most opponents don't even realize they're in danger until it's too late. The lapel choke, the gi strangler. In the early days of the UFC, when fighters still wore GIs into the octagon, the lapel choke was a weapon of mass destruction. Royce Gracie used his opponent's own uniform against them, turning the traditional martial arts gi into a noose that could end fights in seconds. The lapel choke uses the thick collar of the gi as leverage, creating a grip that's impossible to break once established. You open your opponent's collar, insert your hand deep into the fabric, grab the opposite lapel, and pull both hands toward you while tightening your arms. The GI becomes a garrote, and your opponent's own clothing becomes their enemy. While modern UFC rules have eliminated GI wearing, the lapel choke remains a devastating technique in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu competitions. It's a reminder of the sport's roots, when martial artists fought in their traditional uniforms and had to adapt their techniques to use every available weapon. The psychological impact of being choked by your own clothes is profound. It's like being betrayed by your own equipment, and the confusion often leads to panic, which only makes the submission tighter. The ninja choke, the stealth submission. The ninja choke earned its name through pure stealth and effectiveness. This variation of the guillotine uses a palm-to-palm grip that creates a tighter, more secure hold than the traditional finger lock grip. It's faster, more explosive, and significantly harder to escape once locked in. Joe Solecki demonstrated the ninja choke's effectiveness when he submitted Jim Miller with this technique, but it was his post-fight celebration attempt that made headlines for all the wrong reasons. The ninja choke works by applying direct pressure to the neck with a grip that feels like a steel cable. The palm-to-palm connection creates a more natural hand position that allows for greater squeeze pressure and better control. What makes the ninja choke particularly dangerous is its speed of application. While opponents are familiar with defending traditional guillotines, the ninja variation can be locked in and finished before they realize what's happening. It's the submission equivalent of a sneak attack appearing out of nowhere and ending fights in seconds. The ninja choke represents the evolution of submission grappling, taking proven techniques and refining them to be faster, tighter, and more effective. The forearm choke, the brutal simplicity. Sometimes the most effective techniques are the most primitive. The forearm choke strips away all the complexity of modern submission grappling and reduces the art to its most basic element: using your body to stop your opponent from breathing. You drive your forearm into their windpipe and use your body weight to amplify the pressure. It's not pretty, it's not technical, and it's absolutely devastating. The forearm choke shines in no-gi situations where traditional grips aren't available. It can be executed from mount, side control, or any position where you can create downward pressure. The technique works by compressing the trachea directly, cutting off airflow rather than blood flow. This makes it particularly uncomfortable and forces quick taps from even the toughest opponents. What makes the forearm choke so effective is its simplicity. There are no complex grips to learn, no specific positioning requirements, and no counters that require years of training to master. It's the submission equivalent of a sledgehammer, crude but effective. In self-defense situations, the forearm choke can be a lifesaver, requiring minimal training. The north-south choke, the crushing embrace. The north-south choke is what happens when you combine perfect positioning with devastating pressure. You transition to north-south position, encircle their neck with one arm, and use your entire body weight as a weapon. It's like being hugged by a hydraulic press. Heavier grapplers love this submission because they can literally crush their opponents into submission, using gravity as their accomplice. The scarf hold choke, the judo classic. Straight from the judo playbook, the scarf hold choke traps your opponent's head under your arm while applying chest pressure. Juan Espino proved its UFC effectiveness against Jeff Hughes at UFC 253. It's old school brutality that catches modern fighters off guard because they've never trained to defend something their grandfathers might have used. The inverted triangle, the upside down assassin. Take the triangle choke and flip it completely upside down. The inverted triangle is set up from top positions like side control, trapping your opponent's head and arm while you're positioned above them. It's confusing, unexpected, and absolutely devastating when locked in properly. Most fighters have never seen it coming. The shoulder pressure choke, the weight of defeat. Islam Makhachev turned this into an art form against Drew Dober at UFC 259. You use your shoulder as a weapon, driving it directly into your opponent's neck while controlling their body. It's not technical, it's not pretty, but it works. Sometimes the simplest solutions are the most effective, and having 170 pounds of muscle pressing into your windpipe is a very simple problem with a very simple solution. Tap out. The Peruvian necktie, the leg-assisted strangler. CB Dollaway introduced this beauty to the UFC against Jesse Taylor. The Peruvian necktie combines a guillotine grip with leg leverage, threading your legs around your opponent's body to create additional pressure. It's like a guillotine choke that went to engineering school and learned about mechanical advantage. The legs provide the extra squeeze that turns a good submission into a fight-ending masterpiece. The front headlock choke, the wrestler's revenge. Matt Hughes showed its effectiveness against Ricardo Almeida at UFC 117. From the front headlock position, you thread one arm across their neck and use your other arm to push their head down. It's wrestling meets submission grappling, and the result is a choke that punishes opponents who get too comfortable in scrambles. The hand squeeze, the caveman special. Keith Hackney used this against Joe Son at UFC 4, and it's exactly what it sounds like. Grab the throat and squeeze with everything you've got. It's not sophisticated, it's not technical, but when you're fighting for your life, sometimes the most primitive techniques are the most effective. Modern MMA has evolved past this, but it remains a reminder of the sport's brutal origins. The twister, the spine-bending nightmare. Muay Thai lovers hitting the subscribe button, that's amazing. The twister is less choke, more spinal manipulation nightmare. This submission attacks the spine by creating a twisting motion that forces your opponent to tap or risk serious injury. Eddie Bravo made this technique famous in his 10th Planet Jiu-Jitsu system. And Korean Zombie shocked the world when he used it to submit Leonard Garcia. The twister requires you to control your opponent's legs while cranking their upper body in the opposite direction. It's like trying to open a bottle cap, except the bottle cap is a human spine. The pressure builds gradually, then becomes unbearable. Most fighters tap not from pain, but from the terrifying realization that their spine is about to snap like a twig. The twister represents the evolution of submission grappling beyond traditional chokes and joint locks into the realm of spinal manipulation. The complete submission arsenal. Every choke we've covered today represents decades of martial arts evolution, from the ancient judo techniques that form the foundation to the modern innovations that continue pushing the boundaries of what's possible. The rear naked choke remains king because of its simplicity and effectiveness. But techniques like the twister and gogoplata show us that creativity and innovation never stop in martial arts. Whether you're a casual fan trying to understand what you're watching or a dedicated practitioner looking to expand your knowledge, remember this. Every submission tells a story of human ingenuity applied to the art of combat. So which choke would you choose if you had to defend yourself in a real fight? Drop your pick in the comments below. Smash that like button if this breakdown helped you understand the beautiful brutality of submission grappling. And subscribe to Fighting Explained for more deep dives into the techniques that make combat sports the most fascinating spectacle on earth. Until next time, keep learning, keep training, and remember, in the world of submissions, knowledge isn't just power, it's survival.